Welcome to Film Detour, a podcast where two longtime film buddies take you down and around the back alleys and side streets of cinema.
With the occasional left-hand turn.
I'm John Napick.
And I'm Bob Mueller. So let's go. John, you ready?
I'm ready.
Let's hit it.
So today's episode, Badlands.
Terrence Malick, 1973. Great director.
Great director. He's been around a long time. He did start out as a screenwriter. He was uncredited on Dirty Harry.
Really? I didn't know that.
And then he did write the screenplay for Pocket Money.
Okay, the Paul Newman.
Yeah. Badlands is his first film.
Yeah, it's really amazing, John, because it holds up so well. And in watching it again recently, I'm so impressed with this as a first movie, and it's a Hollywood movie. The way it's put together, it looks like something you would see, at your regular theater, that it wasn't going to be some sort of art movie.
I mean, he did it for $300,000.
Really?
Back in 73 or 72.
What is the rate of exchange for that, John? What's the rate of inflation?
I would say maybe $1 million. I don't know. And it took about 6 months to do, and there was a lot of trouble on that production. He went through 3 cinematographers.
Yeah, I saw that, and I think that's interesting. So my impression was, because he's such a person of the visual nature, that I thought maybe he got 3 different cinematographers because he wanted 3 different looks.
No, I think he is very visual, and he does this to this day. I've read about this. He sometimes will just change his mind. So anyway, Badlands was his first film, and then
Days of Heaven, which to me is just an incredible movie. It's almost like you could watch it silently,
yeah,
because it's so visual,
right?
And he's so great with widescreen, these great widescreen shots, and he just knows how to capture a landscape like nobody else. And the landscape in Days of Heaven is so much a part of the movie itself. It's a character.
Well, it took him 5 years to get to that film, and what's also great about that movie is Nestor Almendros was the cinematographer.
Right. The Thin Red Line.
The Thin Red Line, I think, is a great war movie, World War II movie.
Right.
A lot of different stars in that.
A ton of different stars.
Sean Penn, Nick Nolte.
It's sort of like The Longest Day. It's got 800 different people coming into it.
That's very funny, yes. Then The New World, which I thought was a pretty good telling of the John Smith Pocahontas story, basically. And then The Tree of Life.
Right.
It's all handheld. It's mostly natural light. There's a lot of sun glare. All the mistakes you were taught in film school not to do.
Well, that's interesting because that's how I feel about Cassavetes films. Sometimes he'd shove an elbow in the middle of the shot just to make it not so perfect. So that's pretty interesting. Maybe he took a little note from old John Cassavetes.
Yeah.
So he had 3 cinematographers on this movie.
Yes.
I mean, what a show off.
Yeah. The first cinematographer was... he's British, Brian Probin.
What's interesting to me is when you look at his background, he didn't do that many movies that you would go, oh, wow, this is great. He did do Downhill Racer with Robert Redford.
Oh.
And he did The Satanic Rites of Dracula and Frankenstein and the Monster from Hell.
You got to wonder how Terrence Malick got to him.
That's what I'm kind of confused about. So he would be, a cinematographer who worked a lot, but...
Yeah.
These are the 3 movies that come to mind that I say, okay, at least I know the titles.
Yeah, well, he was the first cinematographer on this. He kind of created the look with Terrence Malick, and then because it was such a long, arduous shoot.
He just had to leave because he had other gigs?
He kind of got ill, exhaustion, and he left.
It's like working for Werner Herzog.
Yes. And then Tak Fujimoto came on.
Yeah, he has also this kind of strange mix of different things. He did Death Race 2000.
Amazing, right?
So
you could see him getting his start with
Corman.
With Corman.
Right. So that's a David Carradine movie. And then another movie called Chatterbox. And can you imagine what this movie's about, John? Chatterbox? It's about a woman who can talk through her vagina.
Is it a soft porn?
No, it's
not.
Like
a comedy.
Yeah. It's a pretty interesting 1970s movie.
I missed that one.
Well, maybe that was a good thing. And then Tak Fujimoto, did he leave too?
I think he got fired. I don't know why they couldn't agree. And then
Terrence Malick did not like the Death Race 2000 look.
He didn't like Sylvester Stallone in a helmet coming through, running over old ladies.
So, and then you got the other guy, Stephen Larner.
Yeah.
Now, he has another, once again, interesting career. He did the movie called The Student Nurses. Well, gee, I wonder who produced that one. Roger Corman.
Was that on a double bill with Chatterbox?
It could have been, actually, if you think about it. Steelyard Blues.
Oh, good
Which
movie.
you know. He did the first couple of episodes of Roots for television. He did the Buddy Holly story and Caddyshack, but mostly he did television work.
Right.
And he had a long career, too.
Yeah. I guess you got to pat Terrence Malick on the back because this movie, I feel, has a very consistent look.
Oh, my God. Yeah. And as music. Now, music's a little weird in this one because there's so many different bits and pieces of music that are in it. George Allison Tipton is credited with the music, and he
with
did
the soundtrack.
Right, the soundtrack, and he did a lot of the music, the little bits and pieces of stuff, which was really great stuff, really neat stuff, really poignant stuff at times. But there's a variety of classical pieces.
Yeah,
and if you can get your microscope out, there's actually a James Taylor song in there.
Yes, it's an instrumental, right?
It's called Migration.
And the other two pieces, just so that keep repeating, is the Musica Poetica.
Right.
You hear it now a lot. It's in a lot of
it's been used in different movies and on television and whatnot. But it's really weird because that piece goes back to the 1500s.
Yeah.
Talk about a resurrection of a tune.
So just to give credit due, the composers of that song and there's another one called La Ballade Sauvage, Carl Orff and Gunhild Keitman.
There you go. Very good, John.
I hope I got those names right.
I think you got it.
And then the other piece, the piano piece, is Eric Satie.
Just a mixing bowl worth of music, and Malick really conjures it all up and puts it all together in the right place at the right time.
I think it's amazing. The way he uses them to create this mood throughout the whole film is just
That's
fantastic.
beautiful. But it reminds me of Kubrick. Kubrick was so good at taking pieces of music and just finding them from some obscure composer or a composer you know, and he could just really take those and run with them as well. Our friend George Allison Tipton, he was the arranger for Everybody's Talking for the song from Midnight Cowboy.
Right.
He did the arrangement for that.
So there's basically 3 stars in this, right?
Right.
We'll start with Martin Sheen, who plays Kit.
Martin Sheen has an amazingly long career.
Yeah.
I mean, he goes all the way back to live television, Route 66, he did Naked City, he did The Outer Limits, and he was even on My Three Sons.
One of my favorites, NYPD.
Yes. If you look at his body of work, oh my God, talk about a workhorse actor. The guy never stopped.
I mean, he became a really big star on The West Wing, plays President Bartlett.
But he also did a variety of television movies, and the first thing that I remember seeing him in that really struck me was The Execution of Private Slovik. He was also in The Missiles of October with William Devane. He played Bobby Kennedy. William Devane played Jack.
He also played the presidential nominee in The Dead Zone. And he's really spooky in that.
He's pretty scary in that, yeah.
There's that nightmare that Christopher Walken has about him, the president, creating this apocalypse.
Absolutely.
It's terrifying.
Yeah.
But one of his early films I really love, I think we've talked about this, The Incident with Tony Musante.
You beat me to it. There are a couple of young toughs, and they're on the subway train, and they just take everybody hostage.
Yeah.
And talk about an all-star cast. There's Thelma Ritter. There's a million people in that cast.
That's an amazing movie, I think.
You should go back. Anybody who hasn't seen it, go look it up. The Incident, Martin Sheen. Obviously, we know he did Apocalypse Now.
Willard. Very interesting.
He was in Willard?
No, Willard is his name.
Oh. I'm going, wait a second, John.
He played Willard.
He was not in Willard.
Right.
And he was also in a weird little horror movie with Jodie Foster called The Little Girl Who Lived Down the Lane.
And then there's Sissy Spacek as Holly.
She did a lot of TV. And she was in Love American Style. She was on The Waltons. I remember that episode.
She looks like she should be on The Waltons.
Yeah, there you go. She was on The Rookies. And throughout her career, she's done television.
I remember her from Prime Cut.
Prime Cut is really one of the strangest movies I've ever seen.
It is.
It's a Michael Ritchie film, and it's Lee Marvin and Gene Hackman.
Yeah.
She's terrific in it. She's very young, and she looks too young that she shouldn't really be in that movie.
Yeah, she's in a brothel, basically, yeah.
She was in Three Women, the Robert Altman film, Carrie, and The Coal Miner's Daughter.
She won an Oscar as Loretta Lynn. Also, a similar movie to Three Women. Do you remember Alan Rudolph? Welcome to L.A.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
She plays. I remember having the album for the soundtrack, and she plays a maid who can't keep her clothes on. I believe is the tagline.
Yeah.
She was also in Missing with Jack Lemmon.
And then we have one of our favorites. We've talked about him in several movies we've done here. Warren Oates.
You know, you just can't go wrong with Warren Oates. He's got a small part in this movie, but he just adds credence to everything he's in.
Yes.
If he's in one scene, he's worth watching.
Yes.
What is he going to do? How is he going to convey this mood? What's he up to? Off the top of my head, you know, one of your favorites, John Dillinger.
Yes.
The Bring Me the Head of Alfredo Garcia. He's in 1941. He plays the crazy
right.
The Air Force commander.
And Stripes with Bill Murray.
There's your diversity. We go on forever about Warren Oates, but
right.
we'll put it aside. He has just a small part in this. But boy, oh boy, is he terrific in it.
Yeah.
So the movie is based on a real life character, Charles Starkweather, who went on a murder spree with his 14-year-old girlfriend. What's interesting is when you see at the end of the movie in the credits, it says, "This is not based on any real characters, you know, any similarity, blah, blah, blah." Well, that's a lot of hogwash because it is based on this guy.
Yeah, and I think Terrence Malick, that story was stewing in his head for a long time because he grew up in the 50s, and that was a big deal then.
You know, basically, Charles Starkweather modeled his whole persona on James Dean.
Yes.
And that certainly comes out in Badlands. And boy, oh boy, is Martin Sheen a dead ringer for James Dean.
And they keep mentioning it.
In the opening shot, we see Sissy Spacek, and she's a young girl. She's supposed to be 15. Now, she was 24 at the time when she was playing this, but boy, oh boy, you don't think she's 24 at all.
No, it's
you
amazing.
Totally buy her as this little girl.
Yeah.
And so she's sitting on the bed with her dog, and we hear the voiceover, and we basically get her story about how her mom died of pneumonia when she was a little kid, and her father was really broken up, and he never quite got over it, and he actually kept their wedding cake in the freezer for 10 years, and then eventually just gave it to the yard man.
It's nice how it begins with that music.
Yeah.
The musica poetica.
Right.
So as you said, this movie is told from the point of view of this 15-year-old girl.
Yeah, it's really well-written stuff.
It's well-written, and her voice quality is pitch perfect, right?
Yeah.
And it's almost like a fairy tale, like feeling to it, the way she talks.
She definitely has a romantic way of looking at things and certainly putting it down on paper. So it would be, I guess, what an adolescent girl would do, right?
And one thing I'll just say about the voiceover, because it carries the whole movie. It's a first-person voiceover. Remember from literature class, when you read a first-person novel, that person's telling the story, you have to question some of it because it's their point of view. In a very poetic way, she kind of elaborates on things. This is my take on it.
Yeah.
And so this carries throughout the whole movie.
So the father finally decides, after he gives the wedding cake away, that they're going to move from Texas to Fort Dupree, South Dakota, to start a new life and to get away from all these old bad memories.
Right.
So where they end up is we cut to Fort Dupree, South Dakota, and riding on the back of a garbage truck, we see Martin Sheen, who is Kit. And this shot is really interesting because this guy we see him for the first time, he's going to change Holly's life forever. And by the way, Martin Sheen doesn't play Kit. He is Kit.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't see even the tiniest shred of acting in this. He's amazing.
I mean, he's the classic-looking kind of 50s, you know, he's not even a teenager. He's like in his 20s in this movie, and the character is.
Well, if you look at James Dean in basically the three movies he made, this is it.
He's got like the jeans, the T-shirt.
Kind of the pompadour hair.
Perfect look to him,
So Kit gets off the truck. They just drove up to a stop, and there's a dead dog lying on the side of the road.
Yeah.
What's that Bruce Springsteen song again? Seen the man by the dead dog. Oh, so anyway, so he goes by the dead dog, and he's kind of playing with its lip and looking at it.
Well, he's trying to bet on what kind of dog he thinks.
So he turns to his partner here. He says, "I'll give you $1 if you eat this collie." And who is this guy? What kind of a thing is that to even remotely think of? And then the guy walks over, his partner Cato, played by
Ramon Beery.
So Cato replies, rather, "I ain't gonna eat him for $1," as if he would eat him for more than $1.
$5 maybe?
And then he goes, I don't think he's a collie either. Some kind of dog, though. Well, I guess he is some kind of dog.
What I took from this is like, it's boring small talk on a mindless job.
Right.
It's like, and Kit is always coming out with something like that, something kind of banal.
He just makes these odd observations.
Exactly.
About the littlest things.
There is a nice little piece of improv. I imagine it is when they start pulling away.
Yes, I know what it is. Watch your head.
It's just like a quick, hey, watch your head.
I thought, it's funny, John. I said the same thing too. That it has to be an improv because the guy's going to hit his head, but this is exactly
it's so Martin Sheen.
But this is exactly what Martin Sheen is like in this movie. You can't tell what's Martin Sheen, what's in the script.
Yeah,
I have to believe that he did some sort of improv as well because he is this guy.
I did read that this was Martin Sheen's favorite role.
Oh my God!
Of all the roles he's done,
he's amazing.
Yes.
Did I make that point enough? So after a while, basically, Kit he says, "I've thrown enough trash for the day," and he just walks off the job.
He just quits.
Just walks off the job.
Yeah.
I mean, for the day. He's not quitting permanently,
No.
but he's just, I had enough thrown trash for the day. So he just walks off. And this is amazing to me because I find people like this fascinating.
Yeah.
Because I was brought up in, the kind of world where I was told, you get up in the morning and you go to work.
Yep.
And then you come home after the job is done.
Yeah.
You
finish the work.
You do the right thing.
Right.
And you don't do the wrong thing. And I watch people like this and I just think, oh my God, I would be too afraid to actually have done that.
Yeah.
Just walk off a job. I couldn't have done it in a million years.
Well, I mean, to me, this is the beginning of how we see Kit. I mean, he definitely thinks he's above normal rules.
Absolutely.
He's in his own world.
He lives in his own world. Absolutely, positively. And then we see him, after he just walks off the job for the time being, and he's walking down the street. And it's like he has someplace to go. He's just messing around.
Yeah.
Just walking down the street.
It's like he's kicking the can.
He's got an old broom. He's kind of an old mop, rather. He's trying to balance it on his hand and whatnot. And then you mentioned the can. That's the funny thing, too, is there's a can in the middle of the road, and he's going to walk. He could walk past it, but he decides to stop, smash it. He's about to walk away and then turns around and kicks the can down the road just because. The guy, as my father used to say, he's got a clear head. Just nothing's going to bother this guy.
I've never heard that one.
He's just going to go. He's just going to go about his business. And then we see him come across this young girl, Holly.
And she's twirling her baton, how American, in front of this kind of nice little Queen Anne house.
It is.
It's amazing how this director finds light. Like the way he just must wait all day to get the perfect light on a house or a shot. And because it's throughout this movie, there's just the lighting on the house is amazing.
That's what Ingmar Bergman was with Sven Nykvist. I remember a story where Nykvist was saying that he and Bergman sat in a church all day just watching the light change. And that's the kind of mentality you have to have in order to make this kind of thing work. So he walks up to her. She's twirling her baton. She has these little short shorts on.
Yeah.
And she's twirling the baton. And he just says, hey, I figured I'd come up and say hello to you. I'll try anything once. Now, this really gives you a sense of what kind of guy this guy is. I'll try anything once.
He goes, I've got some stuff to say. Guess I'm lucky that way.
Yeah. Most people have nothing on their mind. And then he takes a little walk with her.
He's like an actor in his own movie in a way.
So her dad calls her, and she's got to leave. So she goes back to her dad, who's Warren Oates.
Yeah.
And Warren Oates says, well, who's that boy? And she says, she lies. She says, just some boy. He wants to know if we need any yard work done. I said no, and for him not to bother us. And the dad just looks at her like, yeah, right.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting that she's already lying to her dad about Kit. Like right off the bat.
That's a very good point, yeah. The next scene, as if it's going to really matter what the father said, Kit comes up to the house. And in a voiceover, we hear Sissy Spacek as Holly. He was handsomer than anybody I'd ever met. He looked just like James Dean. Think about a girl in that situation at that time in her life and to see this handsome boy coming up and wanting to talk to her.
Yeah.
So it's irresistible.
Well, as you said earlier, like Charles Starkweather, who fashioned himself after James Dean.
Right.
I mean, it's almost like the 50s kind of were the beginning of youth culture and this idolization of these stars, I guess.
Well, Elvis Presley.
Presley.
He was the dangerous, boy, without question.
And I'll just note, by this time in the movie, which is late 50s, James Dean had died in a car crash.
But he was a young man who died. Yeah. He was considered cool, and he only made a few movies. So, live fast, die young, leave a good-looking corpse every time.
And that's,
And the legend grows.
And it carries over to Kit.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So he says to her, "You want to go for a ride?" And she says, "I got homework." And he says, "Bring it along." Yeah, as if she's going to do any homework while she's hanging out with him.
He's looking out for her.
Yeah, he's worried about her studies. So we get a sense of where they're at, where the town is, and we see them walking down the sidewalk of this real nowhere town. And, like we said, Kid is this, rock and roll denim jacketed, two-toned cowboy boots. He's dangerous.
You can see how he appears to her. Like This young girl has never been anywhere. This guy looks like a star, a movie star.
Absolutely.
It's funny when they're walking around town. He looks down and he's like, somebody dropped a paper bag.
Right.
He's like the master of the obvious. You know what I mean? He's like, "Oh, really, Kit? Thank you."
Well, but he's also a philosopher because he says, if everybody did that in town, we'd have a hell of a mess. So he's got a thought for everything. No ifs, ands, or buts.
He likes to hear himself talk, I guess.
So this little, naive girl with her short shorts, just these two hanging out, there's going to be trouble. Yeah. There's no getting around it in this small town with nothing to do.
Right. And then there's this wonderful montage. We hear this music playing, this ethereal music throughout the film. And you see this close-up of Holly. She's looking at the camera. And then we cut to this cow in the feedlot where Kid is working.
He's lost his job in one place, the garbage job, which is that's a pretty tough job to lose.
Yeah.
And so he's down at the unemployment office, and they stick him with this job. So he's working at the feedlot.
Yeah. And it's just, there's a lot of things like this in the movie where you're seeing all this juxtaposition of images and stuff. And I just found that amazing.
And what ties it together, John, is that you have these voiceovers, which are really beautifully written. And she sums it up about her feelings for him and who he is and who she is. And she says, "In the stench and slime of the feedlot, he'd remember how I'd looked the night before, how I ran my hand through his hair and traced the outline of his lips with my fingertip. He wanted to die with me, and I dreamed of being lost forever in his arms." I mean, this is a real romantic thought for a girl to have, which makes all the sense in the world.
Right.
And I have to say that Terrence Malick writing these lines, he writes them with such beautiful poetry, but also in the mind that this girl is thinking them and feeling them. And it just comes across so beautifully. Really poetic stuff.
Yeah, but she's kind of like expanding on reality too, in a way. It's like she's making it hyper real in a way.
But
like
isn't that what girls do at that age? Though?
Yeah,
you know.
But it's also what movies do, right?
Right.
It's like it just makes this moment that much more magical. And you can imagine when you're 15 and you meet this guy,
right?
It's like you must feel like you're in this big cinematic movie.
You're floating on a cloud.
Yeah.
I remember the first time I was love at first sight.
Yeah.
7th grade.
Yeah.
And I saw this girl, blonde girl, from across the way. And I swear to God, John, it was like the dolly just took the camera right into this girl's face. And I couldn't get that girl out of my mind. So you can see that feeling of that first love.
And what's interesting at the end of that, you cut to them and they're together in the car smoking cigarettes.
Right.
You could see her innocence is slowly
absolutely because she wasn't
away.
Smoking cigarettes early on.
It just every time we see her,
she was the cheerleader with the baton, right?
Exactly.
What's interesting to me about the voiceovers, the way the music is, and the sound of the young girl's voiceover, it reminded me so much of To Kill a Mockingbird.
Yeah.
And the narration obviously is of a young girl scout, and you have that same feeling of how this girl is looking at life.
Right.
And also there's a sound that just this really beautiful music, this kind of glockenspiel bell type thing. And once again, it really reminded me of that soft, tender feeling you would feel when you were watching To Kill a Mockingbird.
Right. this montage just goes on, and it basically shows their progression of their relationship. And you see that shot of Kit with the dead cow. He's like in the feedlot. He's just looking at this dead cow.
Well, here's the weird thing about this guy is he says, I'll just try anything once. There's a dead cow. I don't know how it died, whatever. So he decides to just stand on it.
Check it out.
I've never stood on a dead cow.
No.
And then he kicks it a couple times
and he gets off. But it's also like there's a remoteness to him. He doesn't really feel sympathy for animals.
The progression of shots you're talking about the relationship, there's one shot that really struck me. And there's no dialogue involved. It's music. But she's leaning into him. She's smoking a cigarette, leaning him and just kind of whispering in his ear. And that's what I found really interesting about how their relationship developed. And this is what happens when you're young, because you develop you have these confidences with people, you know, that you can't tell anybody else. And that's why she's becoming closer and closer to Kit, because she can tell him things that she wouldn't tell anybody else, that she feels stupid telling somebody else or weird telling somebody else. She has this fish that died, this catfish that died, and she feels bad, but it got sick, and she just threw it out into the garden, which it'll just decompose and actually be food for the plants. But she said, I felt bad doing that, and I had trouble with it, and I turned to Kit. So this is where the relationship really starts to gel.
Who has a catfish as a pet? That's what I want to know.
It's a big old catfish too. She has this kind of vision of Kit as this white knight that is going to come in, save her, and just take away all her troubles. And this one scene that to me does look like a fantasy type scene is where Kit is sitting in a bed it's a single bed, and there are all these, I don't know, ostrich feathers, peacock feathers. They're black in the back, just kind of almost like a headboard for him.
Yep.
And he's sitting there, and he looks young and sexy, and he's got this little quilt blanket on his torso. And just to the right of him is a nightstand, and on the nightstand is the fish, just going. And I just thought, this is the weirdest looking thing. But to her, it's okay. The way I saw it is that he took care of this problem with the fish, and he could, you know, maybe he could speak to fish and make everything all right or something. But that's what she's built him up, and that's for me what this scene really represents.
But also the way those feathers are fanned out.
Yeah,
it kind of gives him this kind of regal crown behind him in a way. It's a very technicolor shot for her. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Again, it's her perception of this romance.
Idealized, you know, vision that she has of this guy. And one small thing here is that the art director is Jack Fisk.
Yes.
And Jack Fisk has been married to Sissy Spacek pretty much since after this movie. So I guess
they met on this movie.
Exactly. So I guess she made quite an impression on Jack Fisk.
I was going to say, Jack Fisk is responsible for a lot of the look of this film.
Absolutely.
He was one of the most consistent crew members. All these people were quitting left
Oh, really?
and right.
I didn't know that.
Yes.
All these little elements that you see within these different sets and different locations.
Yeah.
It is really stylized, and he nails every little thing that should be in that room.
So this montage kind of ends, and we cut to Kit and Holly. They're outside in the woods somewhere. She's buttoning her dress. Apparently, they've just finished making love.
Yeah. Having sex, John. Let's just spit it out.
It's the 50s. People didn't have sex.
Yeah, just say sex.
They made love.
All right.
And we know it's her first time, and she's very matter of fact.
Yeah, amazingly matter of fact.
It's like, did it go the way it was supposed to? She's asking him. So apparently, you know, it was like a quick thing, and as the first time usually is.
And then she also says, she goes, is that all there is to it? And he goes, yeah. And she goes, gosh, what was everybody talking about? And Kit goes, don't ask me.
Exactly. But she's so matter of fact, and that's the way her voiceover is too. It's kind of very monotone and deadpan in a way. And Kit being Kit, he wants to memorialize this moment by how?
Well, he says, I got a big rock here, and let's smash our hands with this so we'll remember this moment forever.
We'll never forget what happened here. That's one way to do it, Kit.
But the problem with him is this. His little memento is a little bit too big. So he throws that away, and he finds a smaller one that'll fit the bill, even if they're not going to smash their hands. This is his kind of logic.
Yes. Again, we've seen how this relationship has progressed, and now they're lovers, and now they're going to cement this thing, and they make this balloon.
Yeah, it's a really beautiful sequence because, once again, it's a Terrence Malick shot, and everything is perfect in it. It's got this green grass and this beautiful, perfect blue sky, and these red flowers that are dotting the green grass. And Martin Sheen has found this on his garbage route, this balloon, and he takes all these little tokens and he puts them in it and sends it off. And there's a great voiceover. I'm just going to throw in a couple of words here right now. Kit made a solemn vow he would always stand beside me and let nothing come between us. He wrote this out in writing, put the paper in a box with some of our little tokens and things, and his heart was filled with longing. As he watched it drift off, something must have told him we'd never have these days of happiness again, which reminds me of, Days of Heaven right away.
She's kind of creating this Kit in her mind too. So sometimes I hear her say these things and I see these images and I'm like, is that the way she's remembering it? You know what I mean? Like she's kind of romanticizing everything because we know Kit's not a romantic.
Well, the thing is this. I disagree from this point of view. Kit has his own way of looking at different things. And he has these different philosophies. He even will change her words sometimes to give her a better way of saying something.
And then we find out her dad has found out about them.
Right.
As punishment for deceiving him,
he takes this dog out into the field and
her dog.
Yeah, her dog, and just shoots it. It's really distressing because Warren Oates, the father, just shoots the dog dead.
What father would do that?
But see, this is the interesting thing. This about parenting is that some parents get it in their mind that they're going to punish you, to the nth degree, and that's the way you're going to learn this. He does not want her to see this boy anymore, and this is the punishment for it. So God only knows what's going to happen if she sees him again. And
I'm sure the dog didn't have a choice in this matter.
The dog certainly had no say in the matter.
So again, another amazing Terrence Malick shot. You see this billboard in the middle of this vast field, and Kit is driving up to it. He's got this great old 50s car, souped up. It's a lowrider. I don't know what it is, but it's so amazing looking. And it's like this whole movie is landscapes, right? It's like
Absolutely.
These beautiful landscapes. And there's this it's so classic, this shot. It's almost like a Norman Rockwell picture.
Well, I understand it because, I lived out in Kansas for a while, and those wide open fields, they really overtake you, especially coming from the East. Living in New York City for so many years, you see these wide open landscapes, and it does feel surreal, John.
Yeah. So Kit's gonna go talk to the dad.
Right. He tries to reason with him. Just basically says, I love her, sir, and whatnot.
I love how he's so formal, sir.
Yes. Very well-mannered. He reminds me of Eddie Haskell, from Leave It to Beaver. He was always so well-mannered. He was the worst kid in the class.
They probably knew each other. It was around the same time.
They were friends, right? So, Kit does his best to be, mannerly and whatnot. And Warren Oates is just looking at him like, boy, you ain't never going to get anywhere near this girl, so just get on your way.
I love how he goes, you're something. Man, a few words, but it says it all.
But it's the way Warren Oates does it.
Yeah.
And he's only in a few scenes, but boy, oh boy, does he really, really convey this father.
Yeah.
So, so Kit just says...
And you kind of feel bad for him, because he is a single father.
Right.
And he's raising this girl. He's a sign painter. He's a pretty damn good sign painter.
Yeah.
So you kind of feel for the guy.
Look, I'm glad I had a boy. That's all I'm going to say. Glad I had a boy, because I don't know what I would have been doing if I was Warren Oates. I don't think I would have been as calm as he was. I mean, he was stern, but I don't know.
Yeah.
So Kit gets going, and he walks away. Okay, sir, basically, and you go, oh, well, that ain't the end of that.
No.
And not by a long shot. So we cut, and Kit goes to Holly's house.
Yeah.
The father's not there. He's picking her up for music lessons, which basically she's taking music lessons because he wants to keep her as busy as possible, keep her away from Kit.
Right.
So Kit goes to the house. He knows damn well find nobody's home. And he goes upstairs, and the first thing he starts doing, packing Holly's bags.
Grabs a suitcase, starts packing
Unbelievable.
her stuff.
Yeah. Underwear, shirts, nighties, whatever she needs, socks. And he's packing her like, okay, I'm going to pack her and we're going on a trip, as if it's not going to be any problem.
There is a moment you see when he gets up there and he's packing and he does turn and there's a pistol in his back pocket.
Right.
And you're like, that's not good.
No, absolutely not. We're starting to get an indication that this guy's, not exactly the most calm, cool, and collected guy. He's a loose cannon, to say the least.
Yeah.
So Dad comes home with Holly, and he sees him in his daughter's room. What are you doing?
Yeah.
And I got the chills because I thought, geez, this is beyond uncomfortable. So
for both of them, imagine this guy in your daughter's room.
Of all the places.
Yeah.
So Warren Oates, he says, I'm going to just call the authorities and I'm going to get you out of here. And he goes, I wouldn't do that, sir. I can't allow it. And he walks down the stairs and says, how would it be if I shoot you? And you're thinking, oh my God. And Warren Oates just turns around like, I'm going to call the police. So Kit comes down after him and just shoots him. I mean, there's no like pre-planning or some sort of big speech you see in a normal movie. He just takes out the gun and boom, he just shoots him.
It's sad because when he's running down the stairs, you overhear Holly. She's like, Kit, like, wait. She knows. It's, oh, shit.
So Dad's on the floor, and he's dying. And Holly goes over to him, are you okay, Daddy? And turns to Kit and says, maybe we should get a doctor. And Kit goes and feels his chest and says, you don't need a doctor. And I'm thinking, what the hell would you do in this situation? But he just talks his way through it and grabs Dad, pulls him down the basement, closes the door, and he says to Holly, I'll be back in a little while, and leaves.
Yeah. But Holly's in shock in a way.
Absolutely.
Because she doesn't know what to do, obviously, and she's following Kit's lead in a way.
Yeah. There's a point where she's upstairs while she's waiting, and she's up in, I guess, an attic-like area. Maybe was that her room?
I think it was her room, yeah.
And she's looking down, and there are two boys playing across the street.
Yeah.
Which happen to be Emilio Estevez and Charlie Sheen.
Right.
And they're just hanging out, and the one older brother looks like he's showing the kid something. Look like he plucked something off the lamp post or the light post. and he's sitting down showing him something. And what I got out of that was she's upstairs watching this, and to me, it's like her innocence, her childhood is over.
Yes. Because that shot of her in the window, and it's this Queen Anne house, to me, again, it's this like fairy tale image of like the princess up in the window.
That's a very interesting point, John. I didn't think of it that way. Yeah.
But your point that she is looking at like her lost childhood.
Yeah, because if you think about it, she was just playing out there on that front lawn, twirling that baton, and now how much her life has changed like that.
Yeah.
So Kit goes to this place you would have in those days in a record shop or in an arcade, in this case in a bus station. Interesting place for this to be.
Yes.
But you can make a little record of your own voice.
Right.
This is before, cassette tapes and whatnot. It would actually make a record for you.
You paid 50 cents or whatever.
Right. That actually was 50 cents. It was up on that. And what I liked about it too is that booth, was in some area where somebody smashed it. Some
windows broken.
Ne'er-do-well kid or something smashed it. So you're in a sound booth, but it's not going to be that great because the glass is broken.
I'll just say as a little cultural moment, Elvis recorded his first song in a booth like that.
Did he really?
Yeah. He recorded an acetate of himself singing. Brought it to Sun Records.
So he makes this recording that basically says that he and Holly have decided to kill themselves. This is a bad situation and nothing's good going to come out of this for anybody. And the reason he's making this recording, we find out, is he's trying to basically fake out the district attorney, buy himself some time. And he takes it at home and he puts it on this little Victrola outside and leaves it on, I guess, autoplay or something. So it keeps playing and playing so that when the district attorney finds it, he's going to think, okay, they killed themselves. He sets the house on fire. And he's gasoline all over the place, but it's really creepy just to see, what he's going to do with this.
Right.
But even though it's creepy, it is so well shot, John. it's so beautiful the way these flames come up.
Well, you hear the music that's playing now is like choral music because it's voices and whispers, and it's really spooky.
But the thing is, it reminded me we should see Damien in this scene.
It's got an evil feel.
Now the music, I believe the choral stuff is in German, but it sounds like that stuff that you hear in Latin when some sort of satanic scene is happening, this terrible thing. And you see all these flames coming up and, licking the sides of the bed and
Carl Orff, who's the composer of that, is also the composer of Carmina Burana. The horror music everyone plays.
Okay.
It has that feel.
Right. It definitely has that feel to it. So at the same time, it's a creepy scene, and it has this sort of satanic Damien thing going on here. But the photography is so beautiful. The way that the light of the flames and the swirling of the flames coming up and the dust and the smoke. I mean, Malick is so great with detail. He gets all these little nitty-gritties of detail. The only other director I can think that would be so on top of these details would be Scorsese.
Right. And I did read they did burn a couple of cameras during the shoot.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Because you felt like you were in these flames.
Oh, my God, yeah. Jeez. So Kid says, you got to go back to school and get your books because I don't want you falling behind. Once again, this reminds me of when they went out on their first date walking around.
Right.
And he doesn't want her to fall behind with her work. As if this girl who's on the run for murder.
Bob, he's a very responsible guy.
Yeah.
She's going to get a diploma out on the road.
He has priorities. Yeah. She's going to fall behind. They're running from the law. He just killed the father and she's an accessory.
They may be screwed up priorities,
I don't think
but he does have them.
You're right. He's not a total ne'er-do-well. So she basically says, they'd be starting a new life. He said that they were going to have to change their names. He'd be James and she would be Priscilla. You got Jimmy Dean as James, and you got Priscilla Presley.
Of course.
So I that's what I was thinking.
Most definitely.
All right.
Yes.
All right. Then we're on the same page. And then she says, really, which is chilling. She says it was better to spend a week with someone who loved me for what I was than years of loneliness. And that's really profound.
Right.
And she's willing to just grab onto this, even though it's completely fucked up. Because this is the best she's going to get.
I could almost put myself in her shoes and thinking, and when you're 15, and if the bottom drops out, like
it's the end of the world.
You got nothing else really, and you can just think about this 14-year-old girlfriend of Charles Starkweather's.
Right,
she was 14.
14, yeah. How old was the killer's cousin that he married? Wasn't she 14?
Yeah. Jerry Lee. But they didn't go on a killing spree.
No, they didn't. They didn't. But he was known as the killer, so maybe there's a correlation somewhere along the line. So, what's
good point.
So what's interesting to me is Kit concocts these elaborate scenarios about the future. But he doesn't think much ahead when it comes to just shooting somebody and what the consequence is going to be.
Exactly. Well, he doesn't have empathy for people, certainly.
And he seems to have this, this need for living out, whether it's in his head or in his life, this larger-than-life existence to get out of his day-to-day, garbage-throwing life.
Yeah.
So if this is what it takes, then F it, I'll do it.
So next we see them. They're now on the run, and they're hiding out in the wilderness, basically. So they're going to build this treehouse. They're going to build this little house for themselves.
It's fucking Swiss Family Robinson.
Yeah. She talks about they're finding plants, make use of the plants they find. They're going to build a network of tunnels. They got
this whole fantasy in his head, or this at least it seems like Kit's idea that it becomes this sort of part hippie commune for two and part commando compound.
Yeah, but it's before hippie days, actually. Yeah.
Well, that's you know what, John? That's a very good point because I have in my head it's a 70s movie, but you're right, it's the 1950s. So he was way ahead of the curve on this.
There you go. What's funny is a shot you cut to, you see them building this thing, or he's sitting up in this kind of treehouse room, and on the tree is a Maxfield Parrish painting that he stole from Dad's house and a radio. And I'm thinking, what's the radio for? You're out in the wilderness. There's no electricity.
Could it be batteries?
No. The funny thing is, if you notice with Kit, he was a garbage man, but throughout the movie, he keeps taking things. Like when he's in the basement, he brings Dad's body down.
I found a toaster, he said.
Yeah. He just picks up
He just happened to see a toaster. While he's putting a dead body downstairs, he finds a toaster.
And he brings it.
Yeah.
Like he's just always collecting things.
Yeah.
Weird. And then you see him making this booby trap.
Yeah, once again, this reminds me of some sort of Vietnamese,
that's the weird
punji
thing.
stick thing.
Yeah, it's a big ball of branches and it's got spikes and it swings.
It comes pretty close to his head, John.
There's no stunt man. Yeah, I thought like that second pass, right?
The first pass, he moves out of the way still, but it's still pretty close. And then it's passing back the other way, and he has to go, and back out of the way. If this thing hit him, I think he would have been toast.
It's not made out of cardboard. That's a real thing.
Yeah, absolutely. It has weight to it, for sure.
So right after the ball going, you see Kit running around in the woods. He's got the bandana.
Yeah.
He's shirtless. He's got a rifle.
The interesting thing is he looks like Charlie Sheen running around in the jungle of Vietnam in Platoon.
Well, as you said, you were thinking 70s. Well, the movie was made in the 70s. It's definitely a comment on Vietnam, I think, because he looks like he would be in Apocalypse Now, or as you say, it's
Charlie Sheen in Platoon. The thing is, he's having a great time being this commando guy running around.
It's crazy.
I love this next scene. I have to say that Terrence Malick has a real good taste for music.
Yes.
He has a real good ear, I should say, for music. It's a song by Mickey and Sylvia, and it's called Love is Strange, which, is perfectly fitting for this couple, They're dancing around in this kind of silly, goofy style. And this is the lyric. Love is strange. A lot of people take it for a game. And that's, to me, the encapsulation of their whole love, because this is insane what they're doing.
It's insane. Exactly right. I love how Kit dances. He's got his hands in his back pocket. He's doing this kind of rooster walk.
Rooster walk. That's a good one. I couldn't think of it. That's perfect.
It's perfect.
Yeah.
The way, I don't know who came up with the dance. It's actually very classic Americana.
Oh, absolutely.
These two kind of teen types just dancing. It's really great.
But it's on the edge of that thing, like you're saying. It's no longer the nifty 50s. It's on the edge of rock and roll.
Yeah.
And that's the danger that I guess all the parents were worried about. And then from there, we cut to Martin Sheen is trying to get some food, and he's fishing in a river with this net. And, we go from this sort of strange love song to, once again, Holly's voiceover, and she said, we had our bad moments like any other couple. Kid accused me of only being along for the ride, which really cracked me up.
Right.
This is where they're at, living in this secluded area. They have to eat, stolen watermelon sometimes and stolen corn, or even grass sometimes. So yeah, she's a real freeloader. she's coming along for the ride, and she says, "Well, at times I wished he'd fall into the river and drown so I could watch." So that says so much about these two kids.
In a way, they're made for each other.
Yeah, they're
right?
made, exactly. And we cut to the scene where it's morning in the camp, and she comes from the treehouse and walks over to Martin Sheen, or Kit, and she's got her curlers in her hair, and she's got a kerchief over the top to hold the curlers in, and they look like an old married couple sharing the bathroom, getting ready for the day. And that really struck me funny, because that's what they've become, this just perfectly normal married couple. Oh, hi, honey, good morning. I just got to wash my face. Oh, yeah, I'm in the middle of shaving. But they're these two crazy kids who just were in the midst of a murder, and they're living out in the middle of the woods, but they're living just like it's normal. And I feel like a kid is sort of like a disease, that it's spread into Holly, and she just takes all this as normal too.
Well, my take on it, and it's similar, is they're kids, right?
Right.
And Kit, even though he's 25, he's kind of missing a few pieces. Yeah. They're playing house. They don't know how to live a domestic relationship. They're not normal people, but this is their version of it.
So all good things must come to an end.
Yes.
Kit, who is not the brightest star, is having trouble fishing, and he decides to fish with his pistol. And he makes a lot of noise, and this guy spots him, and one thing leads to another. And now we have bounty hunters coming into the camp. And some of these plots or concepts, ideas that Kit had early on about making tunnels and making weapons and all these things really come in handy for him protecting him and Holly. He sees law officers coming in and tells Holly to take off. She hides, and then he slides into home plate.
Yeah.
He slides into this hole that he dug, and this has a flap, camouflage. It's something you'd seen the Viet Cong use. And he's waiting for them, and he's waiting for them. And as soon as they get in front of him, he lifts it up, and he comes up above ground. Now, John, tell me that didn't remind you of Apocalypse Now.
I know.
When Martin Sheen comes out of the water. It's exact.
I think it's very intentional on the part of Terrence Malick. It's a very Vietnam-like image.
But what I'm saying is it's really interesting because it's Martin Sheen. He's raising up out of this blackness, and that's exactly what Coppola does when he comes out of the water before he kills Kurtz.
I think a lot of 70s filmmakers owe a lot to Terrence Malick.
So he comes out of this hole, and he just goes, hey! And the guy turns, and he just blows him away.
No warning.
But the thing is, he doesn't shoot him in the back without any... Well, no, he does give him warning, because he just goes, hey!
That's not much warning.
Well, I suppose that's
because he doesn't wait for the guy to drop his gun.
But it seems like he wants the guy to turn around a little bit. He's just playing with him, messing with him.
And then the other guy takes off.
Right.
And he shoots him in the back.
Yeah.
Like Kit's not looking for a fair fight.
And before he leaves the camp, because they're gonna take off now.
So he shoots down these three guys in cold blood, I think.
Absolutely.
And then we see Kit and Holly visit Cato.
Yeah.
Kit's friend from the garbage truck.
Right.
Another beautiful landscape, and it's got this kind of one-room shack out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, it's a really beat-up house.
Yeah.
It looks really sad.
Right.
He's all the way out in this little piece of property that he's managing, quote-unquote, for this other guy in town. The bed has got this thin mattress that's about, 2 inches thick or something with those open springs. And he's just got crap all over the place.
Right. And let me just make a note about the actor, Ramon Bieri.
A lot of television, Joe.
A lot of television, including the Night Stalker series. And he was in two of our favorite films. One, The Andromeda Strain.
Yep.
And Sorcerer. William Friedkin.
Yes, you're right. That is him.
Yes.
Wow. I wasn't thinking of him in that.
I mean, he's a very
familiar face.
The scene kind of begins. There's a nice little domestic scene of them sitting around this picnic table outside, and they've had a meal.
And she tells this joke.
He has a little joke.
She tells this little joke, and Cato laughs his head off, and all of a sudden, he just stops. And it all sinks into him. I'm eating dinner with a couple of murderers. I got to get out of here. This is really bad.
And he gives them this story about the old man he works for, said he found some Spanish gold coins out in the fields.
Right.
And maybe we should go look for them.
So they go walk into the field, and Cato goes, you know what, I should go get a shovel. So he goes back to supposedly get a shovel, and he's just going to take off.
Well, he starts walking back first. Right. And what's cute is he's walking back, and you see Kit and Holly, they're like kids. They start like throwing dirt bombs at each other and kicking, and they're just playing. And then Cato kind of starts to take off. He starts to run. And Kit sees this. And this is his friend, right? He sees Cato start to run.
Right.
And Kit goes, he calls him, and Cato turns back and he goes, I'm going to get a shovel in the truck.
Yeah.
It wasn't the direction he was heading in.
Right.
And then Kit
he just knows that there's no other excuse to be had.
Yeah.
That's it. You're going to betray me. And he just shoots him. He runs at him and just shoots him. That's
a great pyrotechnic shot.
Because
you see it behind Cato. And it just comes out his back.
Because you get a sense of, what a gun does to somebody's body.
Yeah.
And Cato falls to the ground and then gets up and starts wandering toward the house. And as he's going to the house, he wants to just sit down. I mean, I guess it would be a normal thing. You're hurting and you want to sit down, even though it's a gunshot wound. And Kit, very neighborly, opens the door for him to go inside and walk. It's all perfectly normal.
He's a gentleman. Yeah.
It's so bizarre. But that's how Kit is.
Yeah.
It's just, oh, well, he wants to come in. I'll let him just go sit down.
That's the thing. He has manners, basically.
Yeah.
Right? But he's missing a screw.
Yeah, because he just shot this guy, and he's going to die. And I feel so sorry for this guy because he goes and kind of flops just down on the bed, sits down on the bed, and is just trying to make himself somewhat comfortable, but he's in a total daze. Well, who wouldn't be if they just got shot in the stomach by a guy they used to work with?
Kit's in the room with Kato, and he sees this photo, and he's like, "You never told me about her." And Kato just looks at him like, "You got to be fucking kidding me!" Like, what?
And Holly goes to Kit, "How's he doing? Is he upset? Is he upset?" And Kit says, "Didn't say anything about it to me." And then this young couple pulls up.
Yes.
And all I want to say is, turn around and go away. So he wants to talk to Kato, and he says
he wants something in the house.
Kato's not here. He said, "Well, I just got to get something in the house." And Kit just takes his gun and says, I can't allow that.
Yeah.
And you're thinking, oh, God, now, please don't shoot these people.
Right. Well, what's interesting, these are two normal teenagers.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like typical American 50s teenage, like the mirror opposite of these killer couple they're facing. You know, it's a, whoa.
And he ends up taking the guy and walking him out to the field. I'm going, oh, God, no. You're gonna shoot him in the head. What's going to happen here? And even though I've seen this so many times, it doesn't matter. I still feel sick when he's walking the guy out to the field. Holly comes out of the house and says, hey, and starts talking to the girl and walking with the girl.
As if they're just coming home from school. Holly's just like having this normal conversation.
With him. That's what's so chilling about it.
Yeah.
And the girl says, what's going to happen to Jack and me? And she says, I have to ask Kit. And I go, oh, my God.
Yeah.
So their fate is just going to be left up to what Kit feels should be done with them? It's so chilling.
And the experience of these kids, they don't know what's going to go on. They've never really seen anything like this. It's the 50s. Things are normal. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
No idea of the evil that's lurking, you know?
Yeah, for sure. And then Kit opens up this door.
Well, isn't that a storm cellar?
It's a storm cellar, yeah.
Yeah.
I actually had a storm cellar, which is kind of creepy. And he just says...
Was Kit there?
Thank God. So then he goes... He says, you guys just get down there and you stay there for an hour.
Well, it's funny. He does say, I just had to cut in. He goes, you promise you're going to stay down there an hour? And the kid goes, yeah. And he goes, you expect me to believe that?
Yeah.
He's such a jerk.
So he latches the door so they can't get out.
Right.
And he walks over to a seam between the wood planks and he puts his gun down and it just goes bang, bang. And he starts running away, and he says to Holly, you think I got him? And she says, I don't know. He goes, well, I'm not going to go down there to look and see if I did. And
they just grab hands and run off.
Why did he have to shoot down there? Why couldn't he just leave them alone?
Every time I see it, I have a different opinion. Like, when he does shoot down, I couldn't tell if he sees them or he's just taking random shots. It's hard to tell.
I have felt sick about this scene every time I've seen it so far. But... remembering back to storm cellars, back to Kansas, and remembering how they're set up, hopefully, for these two kids, they moved a little further back into the thing itself, and they didn't stay right there, because if they stayed right there, but the randomness of this, it could have hit somebody in the head, it could have hit somebody in the shoulder.
Yeah, it's very strange.
And I like the black and white documentary footage of the town folk.
The hysteria, because these two kids are on the run. And it's a lot of great little postcard shots, almost out of like a Life magazine feel to it. Yeah.
Yes. And the thing is, what's interesting is they're all scared. All these different areas were scared. I remember hearing an interview with the editor of this movie, and he was saying he remembered that Starkweather really weighed on his mind. He lived in California, and he was convinced that Starkweather was coming to their town. He was going to kill people.
Right.
And it reminded me of Berkowitz. Even though we were in Jersey, we heard this report that Berkowitz was going to come to Jersey and shoot up a club or a disco or some sort of thing.
Right.
And not that I was going to a disco at the time that I would be worried about it, but
it
gave me the creeps, John.
Yeah.
Because he's out there. whoever that is.
I also think at that time of in the 50s, to all these normal people, the idea that young teenagers are running rampant must have been terrifying.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like hell's breaking loose.
So it was Elvis Presley's fault.
It was.
And Little Richard and and the killer.
The killer.
Jerry Lee Lewis. So they take off. As Holly says, they head across the Great Plains following the telephone poles towards the mountains of Montana. And I got to say something. John, you ever drive a Cadillac?
I never have, no.
I got to tell you, you want to talk about a sweet ride? Those old Cadillacs, man, they have suspension like you can't believe. You don't feel a single bump in the road. It's like riding on a cloud. So the only way you could do this kind of trip is in a Cadillac.
I was going to say it better have a good suspension.
Yeah. Also in voiceover, Holly explains that sometimes Kit would run down a cow to save on ammo. And then they cook it.
And then they cook it.
Yeah.
Like these guys,
Who thinks of a thing like that? It wants to save on ammo. So he'd just run it down. His logic seems to be ratcheted tighter and tighter as the movie goes along. So the way they're surviving is, whether it's hitting a cow,
Hey, you need steak.
They sometimes, well, at least on one occasion, they had to eat something called saltgrass. And once again, Terrence Malick really shows all these little details.
Right.
I wouldn't, I can tell you right now, saltgrass doesn't really look very appetizing.
No, but it tastes like cabbage.
It tastes like cabbage, right?
That's what she says.
Doesn't taste like chicken, tastes like cabbage.
But there's all these great shots of wildlife. And the clouds, can this guy shoot clouds?
Oh, my God. I feel like in some cases, I feel like I'm looking at a Magritte painting. They'd also, because they're going to run out of gas. There's no gas stations where the telephone poles run. They take some of the leakage to the gas pipes. They call it drip gas in that part of the country. Kid is standing there, and he's looking at this storm way, way, way miles away along this flat plain. And he's got this gun on his shoulders, and he's kind of hanging drooping his hands over it. And he looks like some sort of crazy scarecrow or something in the middle of the prairie. And he's just standing there with his mouth open, just looking at this beautiful scenery. And it's intercut with all these different animals, like you were saying. You see a lizard, you see a hawk, you see all these different animals looking out in the same way with the same kind of expression basically as Kid has with his mouth open like that.
Yeah. What I took from that scene was he's a loner. Because you see these animals, they're all just lonely animals. There's no them together.
Yeah, there's no pairs.
He's alone in the world.
Yeah.
He's like his own
animal.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Anyway.
absolutely.
So yeah, they're going across the prairie. There's all these great shots. Then one point you see them, they're hiding under this train trestle. And you see this speeding passenger train coming. It's booking down this track. And it's coming around this bend. And the thing just speeds right by. It's really cute. She's got her hands on her ears because it's loud.
Yeah, you bet.
And this thing just goes right by. And Kit's like, oh, maybe we should have hopped it. And she makes fun of him.
It's going, 100 miles an hour?
But it's another interesting shot. Like, it's like normal life passing them by in a way. Like these people just going by.
That's very interesting, Joe. Yeah.
But he's such an idiot. He's like, I could have slowed it down. We could have hopped the train. And she's like, what?
But if you slowed it down for the car, then they would have had to get the car
again,
off.
His logic.
So they make their way towards Saskatchewan. To quote Holly, she calls it a magical landscape outside the law. And while they're driving, it's late at night, it's pitch black out. It's just all this dirt and sand and whatnot. Basically, at this point, Holly's had enough of him. And she's thinking about, she's got to get out of this situation. She's just got to get away. And Kid is starting to say, well, I could get a job. And she said, well, what kind of job are you going to get? And he goes, well, I could be a Mountie. I got all the qualifications. Yeah, he's got all the qualifications. So as they're talking about this thing, or Kit's talking about being a Mountie, there's a song on the radio. And Holly reaches over. She's just gonna touch it. And he goes, hey, don't touch that. Nat King Cole. And it's an old Nat Cole song called A Blossom Fell. They get out and they slow dance in the dust, in the dirt, with the headlights on them, and it's a nice slow dance to this.
Yeah, the headlights are just like illuminating the ground.
This beautiful song, Nat Cole's voice, and it punctuates everything that's just about to happen, that's in the process of happening, because it's a song about a guy who loses a girl and she takes off and leaves him behind.
Right.
Which is, once again, as you said, foreshadowing.
It's literally their last dance.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you said they were traveling at night.
Right.
There is an interesting line where she talks about, she's seeing all the lights off in the distance.
Yeah, I love that. Go ahead, go.
And part of what she says is, at the very edge of the horizon, we could make out the gas fires of the refineries at Missoula, while to the south we could see the lights of Cheyenne, a city bigger and grander than I'd ever seen.
It was just, you could just tell this girl was such a small town girl that she must have been staring at it with her mouth open, right?
As you said, she's never been anywhere.
Yeah.
She's 15. This little city in Montana is like the biggest thing she's ever seen.
Yeah. What would she think? What would she think of Los Angeles?
I know. I thought that was very poignant.
It is poignant. It's very sad. This small town girl, she just doesn't know the world.
This is like the third shot I can remember like this. You see the car speeding across. Again, another amazing green landscape here. And they're pulling up to this lone oil rig. And I guess, so this is one rig out there, and there's a guy living in a trailer, right? He maintains this rig, I guess. The guy comes out, and Kit's like, I'm Carruthers. I shoot people. Like he knows he's already a star in a way. He's like a celebrity.
Not that I deserve a medal for it, he says.
Not that I deserve a medal. Really, Kit?
So he wants gas from this guy, and the guy's not too keen on it. But now he knows who it is, so he's about to comply. And all of a sudden, we see coming in really fast.
Yeah,
helicopter. So I don't know if the cops saw them driving through the terrain or seeing anything else. I don't know. But now they're on them. Now they're coming in for the kill, literally, and. The kid's got to make a decision, and he just says, okay, let's go. Yeah. And Holly says, I'm not going. And he just loses his mind. Then he composes himself because he knows he has to get out of there. And he goes to her, and he says, if you want a second chance, 12 noon, Grand Coulee Dam, New Year's Day, 1964. Be there. Sunday. Be there.
I love that. I heard that, and I thought, he did give a time, right? 12 noon?
Yeah.
I like his line. Boy, I had a feeling today was going to be the day.
Yeah, that's the interesting thing. And he says it with a strange grin. He's like looking for this challenge.
It's like the stage lights have come on.
Yeah. He goes into action. The helicopter lands. He grabs some sort of old fender or something. Like he's got some sort of like knights in shining armor, shield or something.
Like a shield. Well, the one guy comes out with a rifle, and they have this kind of running battle. Yeah. They're both going in opposite directions.
But the cop doesn't have one thing. He doesn't have that medieval shield.
Right.
Kid thought ahead on that one, and he shoots him dead, and that's it. He gets in his car and he takes off, and you see this plume of dust.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of Ron Howard eating my dust. So, so he's going straight, and he comes into town and he tries to con this gas station attendant into giving him some gas. And all of a sudden, police car comes down, sees him, cuts a quick U-turn, and he takes off down the road. It's a great chase scene.
Yeah.
It's a really intense chase scene. And he's making these really incredible 90-degree turns right away.
Yeah. There's a great shot where they're going across the field, almost in tandem.
Yeah.
And they cut through this barbed wire. And I always remember this shot, because of the sound effect.
Bing!
It sounds like a bullet shot or something.
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds like a ricochet.
I always remember that scene because what a great sound effect.
Yeah. Who would think of doing that sound effect?
Alone. It's just amazing.
Because you know exactly what happened at that moment. Yeah, I totally agree with you, And then the cop car smashes into him. He's so crazy. He's shooting out the back.
He reaches out with a pistol.
But he's shooting behind himself. He's not even looking. He's just going bang, 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 bang. He's crazy. And then they come around and they get to a certain point where Kit makes another incredible 90-degree turn. The cop car tries to do it but can't quite hold it and just goes into a ditch and falls to its side.
Yeah.
you have Martin Sheen at a certain point because the car tipped over and
Right.
was kind of
So
tottering
he's
back.
now way ahead
He's
of
way
it.
ahead. And he stops the car and he gets out and he shoots the tire. And we start to see what happens here. He's looking for an excuse to get out of this thing. Right. He's going to get caught, and he's going to be able to make this big, tall tale about himself that, I would have gotten out of there. I could have held you guys off forever if I had enough ammo and stuff. And he starts building this tiny little monument to himself, a marker to say,
he grabs these rocks.
This is where they got Kid Carruthers.
Right.
So it'll be there forever. This is how crazy he is.
Well, this is his shining moment.
Right.
You know what I mean? He's like, this is his moment. Like he is before he stops in the car, he looks in the rearview mirror and he's like, he looks at himself like he's preening himself. He's for this moment.
And once again, he's up on the car. At this point, he's just basically waiting for him.
Yeah.
Hey, he's checking his pulse, going, wow, that was really pretty exciting, you know? And he's standing on top of his car, and once again, this beautiful Magritte sky in the background.
Yeah.
Incredible. Yeah. And the cops come up, guns drawn, they cuff him, and they take him into the car.
I like how it's a younger cop and an older, wiser cop.
Yep.
And the younger guy is like, we did it, Ray. And as they're walking him back to the car, the younger cop just takes a shot out into the prairie. Like, again, he's a kid also.
Yeah.
Like he's a cowboy.
He's
or something.
stoked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like a big thing for him.
He's not even bigger than I am.
Yeah, exactly.
So they're in the car, and they're driving in the squad car. And they drive for a little while, and the younger cop asks him, why'd you do it? And Kid goes, I don't know. I always wanted to be a criminal, I guess. Just not this big a one. Takes all kinds, though. And you see this young cop break into a smile like, geez, this guy's a real piece of work. And then he goes to his partner. He goes, you know who that son of a bitch looks like? I'll kiss your ass if you don't look like James Dean. And then you see Kit break into a total shit-eating grin, and that's it. Validation.
He's achieved his stardom.
That's
right?
it. He's validated at last.
Right. I like the moment where the older cop is driving, and he looks at Kit, and he's just not impressed.
Yeah.
I don't think.
Yeah.
And Kit's like, you guys perform like heroes. And the older guy looks at him, just grabs Kit's fedora and
throws it out. Throws it out the car.
He's like, I'm not
listening to this bullshit.
The younger guy is starstruck.
Yeah.
And the older guy's just like, yeah, come on.
Yeah.
So then we see Kit. They're taking him off. They have to get him on this plane to take him to trial, whatever. And he's with all these National Guardsmen. He's handing out his comb.
And his lighter.
His lighter.
He's giving souvenirs, John.
Yeah.
And they're eating it up.
They're eating it up because he knows he's a star.
Yeah. And who's his favorite singer, John?
Eddie Fisher.
Eddie Fisher, exactly. Regardless of his celebrity, regardless of his validation, he gets the chair.
Yes.
And what I want to know, John, is this. Like Jimmy Cagney, does he turn chicken at the end?
I somehow don't think so. I think Kit probably thinks this is like the big moment.
Yeah.
Like everyone's watching. You know what I mean? That's kind of...
So he plays it to the end. Goes out smiling the whole time. Well, I don't believe Jimmy Cagney ever went chicken in Angels with Dirty Faces. I believe he did what Pat O'Brien asked him to do.
Yeah. So there you go. I think a nearly perfect movie. Shot for $300,000 over 6 months. They had a lot of difficulties, but he pulled it off.
I saw this movie as a film student. You know.
Yeah.
What I knew Martin Sheen from was The Execution of Private Slovak, which actually was around the same time. And I saw it at Cinema Village.
Yep. 12th Street, New York.
12th Street. It had to be a double bill because Cinema Village always ran double bill. I don't think it was Days of Heaven because I saw Days of Heaven at the St. Mark's Theater some other time at a midnight show. But this made a huge impression on me.
Yeah.
It's got just as much punch today seeing it.
Oh, yeah.
So many years later. It hasn't aged at all. And it doesn't necessarily fit into that's a 70s film. You could just throw this on the screen today, say it was made yesterday, and you wouldn't feel it for a second. Well, it's beautiful. It's beautiful.
Interesting you say that because He is different from Scorsese in this movie at least. It's not contemporary, obviously, 70s music or anything. So it's timeless, the music.
It really is timeless.
It gives it that whole quality.
Like I said, if you just saw it in a theater today, you would say, wow, what a great new movie. It hasn't aged at all. Beautiful.
Well, that's all the time we have this week.
We'd like to thank our friend Glenn Ornowitz for his music.
And of course, our listeners for tuning in.
So join us next week for another episode of
Film Detour.
If you like our show, please recommend us to your friends. Subscribe to us on iTunes, Stitcher, or Google Play, and leave a review.
Go to our website at filmdetourpodcast.com to leave comments or email us with questions. You can also visit us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter.